podcast where Steelers football is unfiltered.
Yeah, you know what it is. Black and yellow, black and yellow. Yeah, you know what it is. Everything I do it big. Yeah, that's done. When I pulled up the line, that's done. Reppin' my town.
Roethlisberger and time goes to the back of the end zone, and it is touchdown.
Black stripe, yellow paint.
They can pick down here from the gun. Steelers show blitz. Here they come. He gets it away, and it's picked off at the goal.
Shake, sway inside. My engine roaring.
Fires, intercepted. Picked off at a pick six. Minka Fitzpatrick is an absolute bull.
But there's nothing you could tell them.
Picked off Polamalu.
Push to start. Yeah. You know what it is. Everything I do it big. Yeah. That's done. When I pulled up the line, that's done. I'm in town. Big on my money. Pressure on the run. I'm going down from my wings and my diamonds. I'm in yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow, black and yellow. Gotta
Hold up. All right. Welcome. Yeah, there we go. We got it correct. Welcome to BlitzHerz podcast, another live edition with your host, May Shayla. And I am kicking off this episode, of course, with my very special guest, Neal Coolong from Sports Illustrated. Neal, would you like to introduce yourself before we get started?
Like you just said, my name is Neal Coolong. I work for Sports Illustrated. I previously ran USA Today's NFL Wire Network, where I created the Steelers Wire, which is still in existence now. Before that, I ran Behind the Steel Curtain. I was a Steelers beat reporter for a little while. Throughout my career, I've always kind of stuck with the hometown team. Diehard Steelers fan. I've always really enjoyed following the team, writing about it. More than anything, though, it was always the discussion with people, the community of Steelers fans. That's always really what attracted me to it. It's always what I've really enjoyed, and I get to kind of do both now, the journalism side as well as the fan side, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Once again, apologize for the delay. I'm just glad for you to join me. So yeah, from your journey from DK Sports Pittsburgh, because I read that's where you originally started. Then you went from there to US Today, as you said, with Steelers Wire. And then you went from NFL Wires to, the US Today's Media Sports Group. I think that's what it says. So looking back from where you first was to where you are now, what do you think is the best thing to say for yourself right now?
I'm extremely lucky. There's probably 6 million people that can do what I do. It's a really hard profession. Luck is a big part of it.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody that pats myself on the back very often. It's the gift of desperation is a powerful motivator when you are forced to make something work without really a much of a plan B. If you're on plan D at that point, I started off in journalism and I got out of it. I worked in the mortgage industry around the economic downturn in the 2010s. I was out of work pretty frequently, and the only thing that was feeding my family was writing. When I had gotten out of journalism the first time, I didn't really want to get back in. I didn't have any real desire to do it, but I enjoyed blogging, which was something that I picked up post-career. I didn't want to be a reporter. I didn't want to get back into that. The blogging piece of it, though, was something that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the freedom. I enjoyed the flexibility. I really enjoyed being able to publish an article and have immediate feedback. Whether you're looking at analytics, how many people are looking at your story at that moment. comments from people, both on the site and within social media. I felt like that was the natural fit. That's what I wanted to do, but I did not really ever anticipate there being a career option for that. For a lot of that decade, people didn't really take it seriously. Large mistake by mainstream media, as it turns out. I enjoyed the writing part, but what really hooked me in was the business side of it, digital marketing, Google Analytics, basically, the stats, the data, learning SEO, finding out how to draw more people in to what you were doing without any real promotion outside of yourself, building that up. Now, I had several people that helped extensively with that, learning from them, asking questions, just really getting a college level education without books, without class, just having to hustle to learn as much as I could about all of it, just because I was interested in it. I didn't honestly do it with the thought in mind that I was going to have a career. This was really just kind of a paid hobby for me, and I really liked it. Turns out that the line of work that I was in had kind of a rough spot, to put it mildly. The recession from 12, 13 years ago, it was directly impacting the business that I was in. The fault of nobody, whatever it is that happened. I lost my job a few times, and I had to continue to write to bring money in. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? The writing thing is the only thing that I seem to be good enough at to continue doing. This is the one job I haven't lost. So maybe I should try that. And I went kind of all in with Behind the Steel Curtain. I was able to parlay that into the gig with USA Today Sports Media Group. And really what that was I was contacted by a recruiter, and anybody in this space, you're working for a site long enough, there's going to be a recruiter that'll contact you looking to acquire the site or set up some type of rev share deal with your work. And they had done that to me, and the guy that I was emailing with wanted to buy Behind the Steel Curtain, which has the SB Nation logo emblazoned all over it. I mean, I didn't own it. Couldn't exactly sell it. If he would have given me cash and I could have given him my rights of Behind the Steel Curtain, maybe I would have done that. But I had said to him politely that, I don't own it. I can't sell it to you, but I'm just curious, if your client wants to increase their digital space, which is what they did, why don't they just build one, instead of trying to buy up known brands that, Behind the Steel Curtain is probably going to sell for high six figures at this point, if not more. Why not just build one, create your own capital? And the recruiter thought it was a good idea. So he put me in touch with the general manager, USA Today Sports Media Group, a gentleman named Chris Perrone, greatest guy in the world, as it turns out. We talked for 90 minutes on my 60-minute lunch break that day. It turns out we kind of early concepted this wire network. He came up with the name. I didn't have anything to do with that, but the idea was we wanted to capture the spirit of the diehard fan of each of these teams, have individually focused teams, which I guess isn't all that different from SB Nation, but we wanted to start fresh with something. And we had an idea on staffing and budget, what we wanted to do with it. And what we came up with was we wanted to gather up super fans who knew how to write, and then attract other super fans who want this highly specified, frequent content surrounding their teams. So we set to launch with it, and I'll be honest, I talked a good game, but I didn't think it would do as well as it did, and it continued to go above and beyond that. Last 5 years that I was there, it was like I was perpetually stuck in the idea that I really didn't think we would have what I would have thought it would be a success in year one was like 2% of what we ended up doing. We were way above and beyond any expectations, and the value I learned in that, I I understand SEO pretty well. I'm a super fan who knows how to write. The luck that I had was not only lucking into that opportunity. There's a lot of people that know what I know. There's a lot of people that can do what I do. It was the luck of being associated with Chris, who fast forward is my boss today at Sports Illustrated. But it was being able to identify others who could carry this kind of model, who wanted to do it, and putting them into a position to succeed. And I've had probably over 100 highly skilled writers and producers who have taught me infinitely more than I knew when I started. And we stuck to that brand. I was very lucky to work for a company at that point that was, it fostered that kind of growth culture. They wanted to invest in people. We wanted to target people and help them grow and learn from them, take their ideas and try to make it something that a lot of people could do. A lot of people would be interested in. And a lot of people that worked for me that knew everything that I know. And it was very easy. It's like, hey, here's the ball, go play. Many of them to this day I talk to frequently. They've been instrumentally helpful in my career, and I'm blessed to have been around them. The Sports Illustrated job came up. Chris had the opportunity to take on a general manager role for the Arena Group, which owns Sports Illustrated, Athlon Sports, Parade, The Street, a bunch of other popular properties. He asked me if I'd be interested in running their breaking news team, which I was. I went over there in November, and I'm doing the SI breaking news as well as Athlon Sports today. And again, just blessings and luck. I mean, I work hard. I think I've learned a lot, but each step of the way has been a blessing, and I've taken as much advantage of that as possible to learn everything that I could, and to try to be the best manager, the best leader that I can be, to try to give other people similar opportunities to have success in their lives.
Oh, yep. Great. That's actually practically relatable because to me, in order for you to even think to want to work in this industry or just to even be a part of it in any way, shape, or form, you got to love what you do. Because if not, you're not going to put your best foot. And people don't understand this. And I've said this probably for the 5th episode straight, if I haven't, maybe like the 3rd, but I said this more than once. This is a real hard industry to get into. And even nowadays, with all the people, that wants to be involved, getting involved, you can argue that it's going to be just as hard because it's back in your day, even in my day, it's not easy. And it's always going to be that one other person who's going to want exactly what you want or, what you have. If not, they're going to prove to why they should be more valid or things like that. And, that they want it more. So it's like, even though you don't really want to see it as a competition, sometimes it could be. So, but speaking of which, what would be your advice to someone like me or others who is looking to break into this industry? Because I'm a young pup. I'm 23. I'm going to be 24 in like 2-3 days. I actually turned 24 this Sunday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So it's like, what would be your advice to someone like me or others who are watching right now that wants to be here, like wants to be where you are or wants to be a broadcaster, who just wants to be overall a sports journalist?
My infantile knee-jerk reaction is don't find another job. I say that not in discouragement. It's just it's an extremely difficult industry, like you said. So much of it is just truly not in your control. But if you want to do it, all right, here's the thing. One thing that, I don't know if I've ever even said this before, but one thing I've done basically every morning for the last 15 years, I get up out of bed and I get up early. That's another side piece of advice. This is not a late night thing anymore. Digital is early. Your audience is getting up. You need to be up and you need to be creating content. I get up in the morning and I just kind of say to myself that I want this, this is what I want to do. I am sure of myself that this is what I want. There are days I feel like shit. There are days that I probably don't want it, but if I don't keep focused kind of on that bigger perspective,
Yeah, keep going.
that fire goes very, very quickly. And this is as much fun as it is. It's a grind. I talked about this with my writers a lot. This is a very mentally taxing business. The thrill of watching a game as a spectator is not at all what you are going through if you're covering a game. When you're sitting down in front of your computer after a game or an event or whatever, and you need to come up with something, it's really hard with that fatigue, that mental exhaustion, to have that same level of passion as all the people leaving the field or the arena or whatever, as all the people that just watched what you watched, that just read what you read. You have to be on top of that from a passionate level, from a knowledgeable level, from an insight level, and you need to find a way to synthesize what happened, what's being said, into your own commentary on it. And that it's a take world now. It's not that you can't be accurate, but you have to provide people with something unique, some type of insight that is interesting. It's a really hard word to find out in this space. And the worst part of it is you don't get the time to do what you think is a quality job, because there are really good people that just completed what they're doing that's interesting and unique 10 seconds ago. You're late the second that news breaks. So you have to be on top of that from a news perspective. You have to be on top of that from an opinion leader's perspective. You have to be on top of it from a social engineer. You need to know how to operate within and around social media to get your content out. So you have to have a take that's interesting and unique. You have to be extremely fast. To do all of that is hours upon hours of research. It's not just spouting off with people on Twitter, though I'm guilty of doing that far more than I probably should.
Vice versa. Sometimes you got to clap back.
Yeah, I mean, it's I do a lot of it I like to say to keep the edge sharp, but in all honesty, the more that I have to do nowadays, I do it to try to keep up on what's going on. It's hard to stay on top of everything. Another big piece of advice, and this is one that frankly people listen to probably the least when I tell them, you got to read. You have to read all the time. There's not a thing I don't read. I'm probably doing something in a work capacity 12 to 14 hours a day, and most of it is reading. I communicate a lot with my staff. To understand everything that's going on, I have to read. I spent 7 years with USA Today covering football. Now I'm overseeing every sport. Today's opening day for baseball. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with that. I had the luxury of getting to completely avoid baseball for a long time. I didn't have to worry about baseball. Now I do. I have to read up on that. I have to know who people are. You have to know where the story is going to come from. And the only way that you can do that is by knowing everything there is to know about it. That's finding other writers. Writing is important. Speaking like you're doing, producing, all of that is very important. Watching the best of the best, reading the best of the best, do what they do, and notice what's good about them, things that you might try to learn from, far more important than anything else. You have to see quality in action in order for you to understand what quality is. And just my useless 2 cents, I don't think a lot of young people do that. And you can kind of tell when you read over, it's like, you probably don't know this subject very well. Those who do will read it, and they won't be as polite about it as I will. They're going to tell you about it. So
they're going to let you have it in those comments.
And it's not about arguing back. It's about preparing yourself to be able to have the conversation where what they're calling you out is not procedural. What I mean by that is, if your take on the situation is something people don't disagree with, that's fine. Because you know what? Colin Cowherd gets paid probably $10 million a year, and nobody agrees with that guy. That's why he does what he does. He's really, really good at it. If you are factually incorrect, or you clearly don't understand what it is that you're talking about, it stands out, and they'll be all over you in a heartbeat. That's all they do, sit and wait for those kinds of things to come up. Young people are anybody really, but one of the biggest detriments I see for younger people getting into the field is the fear of that kind of backlash. It's like, I get it, I understand it, but you're going up against people that aren't putting their name on something, that aren't risking the clap back. They're not. They have fake names, but they know the subject probably better than you do in a lot of cases. If you want to be able to counter that, if you want to go against it, you got to read. You have to know everything. It's not just about watching the game and coming up with a take. You have to know what the rules are. I've joked about this a bunch. The formative years growing to this point in my career were spent in Goodell's NFL, which is all about regulation. Okay. There was a time you didn't have to know every single detail of every single rule in the NFL in order to be able to communicate about it. 40% of every radio spot that I do, most of the stuff that I write, the ideas that we come up with, it in some way it's rooted in some type of rule in the NFL. That wasn't the case. You might remember, maybe you don't. This is how old I am now. For those listening, when James Harrison utterly destroyed Josh Cribbs and Muhammad Massaquoi of the Cleveland Browns, week 5
of 2008 season
2010.
is what you're talking. Oh yes.
The last game before Roethlisberger came back from suspension. Harrison,
yeah, I remember
absolutely destroyed both of those guys, and there were two other hits that weekend. Merriweather, the Patriots, was one of them. I forget what the other one was. Dante Robinson, maybe, the Texans. They were collectively fined what was at the time a shockingly high amount for, basically over violent hits to the head. Now today, there are laid out rules that we get into arguments about every single week. Back then, we didn't know what it was. It's a joke today to say, well, we don't know what a catch is. We didn't know what a hit was. Imagine having to write that without any kind of precedent, without any rule. I mean, the rule was there, but that stuff happened all the time. For example's sake, for Harrison's hit, they were selling pictures of it after the game, and then they fined him like $75,000. Not going to get into the history of that whole thing, but the point is, what has evolved in the NFL since then has been basically enough legal study that there are sports writers who could probably qualify for a JD in law just because of the amount of regulation that's come into the NFL. 3 CBAs, 4. There was a lockout, kind of a mini lockout at one point. The constant battle over fines, the legal issues that have come into the NFL. You didn't have to know the legal side of the league nearly as much 15 years ago, the way that you do now. And with all of that, if you didn't read a lot of, to be honest, boring shit, okay? I didn't go to school for a law degree. If I did, I'd be making a lot more money than I make right now. I know that. We had to figure it all out on our own. We had to learn, read, ask questions, cover real stuff, not just here's why I think James Harrison shouldn't be fined for this hit. It's not as simple as that. There's a lot of other nuance that comes with that. If you want to be seen as a subject matter expert, if you want to be seen as a voice of reason, if you want to be seen as an opinion leader, you have to know what you're talking about. I know that sounds simple. I'm using that as an opportunity to say, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to really that's the work. It's not doing what we're doing right now. It's researching, it's reading, it's fully understanding everything about what's going on, not from a fantasy football perspective, But from a league perspective, can you talk about the rules, the rule changes that went in? Do you have examples of what that's going to be like? Can you speak to that at the drop of a hat? It takes a lot of time and effort over a long period of time. So winding it back to the beginning, I get up in the morning knowing that that's what I'm going to do. It's early. Nobody else is up. I've got my music. I've got my coffee. I'm going to get better today. And to do that, I've got to do a lot of stuff that I might not find particularly interesting. I'm kind of a dork like that. Maybe I do kind of like it, but it's about the end goal. It's where I want to be over a period of time. And that kind of dedication, if I have anything that makes me stand apart, I think it's that. I've stacked on, as Mike Tomlin would say, I've stacked wins. And what I've done, I've added to it. I've continued to be curious. I've allowed myself to be humble and continue to seek out information that I don't have, that I don't know. I'm not afraid to say I don't know something, because there's a lot of shit to know. It's really hard to kind of get everything. But you got to put in the work, that's really kind of the bottom line. And I hate to say this too, because it always drove me nuts when people, when I was your age, that would tell me the same thing, but a huge amount of it is luck. Right place, right time. But I do believe positioning yourself, envisioning yourself having that success really is the difference.
Yeah. You know what? You spot on. I was a little guilty of that before I really started getting my feet dirty into this industry and
We all were.
realizing what I want to do and what it takes. But in order for you to be a sports writer, you have to have the statistics, you got to have the facts, you got to have everything to back up everything that you say. And some people don't. No need to say names, but you've seen it, I've seen it. We both got Twitter. Speaking of which, you did bring up Mike Tomlin. So I have to ask this question because this has been a trending topic around Steelers football. Are you on the fire?
Years.
Yep. 17 years. Are you on the fire Tomlin train like others within Steeler Nation?
I'm not. And I usually answer this by saying I am also not on the train that the Steelers have the greatest team in football. I'm not on the train that they have this ginormous amount of talent on the team. They don't. They really don't. And they didn't last year, and they didn't the year before that. I don't think anybody in their right mind could disagree with that. There are plenty who do. And what I would say is this, the idea that the Steelers have somehow fallen short of expectations over the last 2 years doesn't mesh with the idea that they have the productivity that they have. Okay. Really, this comes down to their offense. And we're going to continue to talk about that because the only thing anybody's going to say is, well, blame the offensive coordinator. Look, they're not that talented. They really aren't. George Pickens, I understand that everybody assumes that last season he caught 130 passes for 1,900 yards and 20 touchdowns, but no, he didn't. He's a rookie. He only played 24 college games. 12 of those 24 games came in his last 2 years there. He's barely played football. Okay. He's not experienced. He's not a good route runner. He's also a kid. He's young. He's going to develop. He's going to build, but he's not there. And he is without question their most physically talented receiver. Deontay Johnson is a good receiver. Deontay Johnson's a receiver, though, that was taken out really by scheme by teams. He can catch the ball, he can get open, but they completely shut him out after the catch. And that's because they basically bracketed him wherever he went on the field. And that's because they didn't have a second option. Some of that, at least some, probably more, goes to the fact that they signed a poor veteran quarterback in the offseason willingly. That was their choice.
Mitchell Trubisky. And
then drafted a quarterback at 20 overall. Typically, a first-round quarterback going in the 20s is not going to be – there's not a high level of probability of success with that. Not ragging on Kenny Pickett. He had some learning he needed to do, okay? We have plenty of evidence of that. His first 4 games versus his second 4 games is remarkable how different they are.
Yeah.
You still had 4 games with Money Mitch and then 4 games of Pickett. Half your season went with woefully inadequate quarterback play. Your receivers aren't going to get much opportunity, and they aren't good enough to really create a whole lot of their own. The offensive line was put together for the third year in a row. They had multiple new starters and another new coach. It's hard to succeed offensively when you lack continuity on your offensive line, let alone talent. They have absolutely no talent. They don't have enough talent to overcome the other inadequacies that they had. When I say that, what I mean is just my useless 2 cents. I think Dan Moore is perhaps the worst offensive tackle in football. He has not demonstrated enough that I feel he should keep his job. I think they're about to use a premium pick on a left tackle who's going to start in year one. Probably a good thing. They're coming out of all of this, but all of these things, which, to be honest, it's my perspective. People can accuse me of being negative about it.
Yeah.
I use it as a beacon of optimism and success, because they were a dumpster fire for half of this season. Okay. They averaged 15 points a game.
They were dead last in the league.
If it wasn't for whatever the hell Nathaniel Hackett was doing in Denver, if it wasn't for that, they would have been the worst offense in football. Okay.
Right.
Can't get past that. How did Mike Tomlin lead that team to the success that they had over the second half of the season, particularly the last 5 games, and a winning record in that time? How did he do that?
9-8, and they only had him they were non-Joe Flacco bad play, and made field goal by the Miami Dolphins away from the playoffs.
I was watching.
That would have been funny. That would have been fun.
Look, you know what? They dug themselves into a hole early. I'm not at all saying that they were like a smashing success or they got screwed in some way. They made their bed. Okay.
Yeah, you can't get swept by the whole AFC East and then expect to make the playoffs, knowing that at least 3/4 of that division is most likely going to be battling for a playoff spot.
Good. Bring up the AFC East. That's perfect. Against Miami, Pickett threw 2 picks on their last 2 possessions. Bad picks. Both
against the Patriots. Mistakes. Trubisky stunk up the joint.
Trubisky played against the Patriots. That was the main problem with that game. He was awful. Okay.
And I was there. You ain't had
really?
To tell.
Oh, God, you terrible game. Let's not let Gunnar Olszewski off the hook either. He's signed for $2 million to come in and field punts and run them forward, and he can't do that. So
what a fumble.
Doesn't help. Okay. Mistakes kill them. We can blame the coach while pointing out individual mistakes of players. We can blame the offensive coordinator because, to be honest with you, if they need to change anything, they need to diversify routes among their receivers. They don't run combo routes at all. Some of that could be the lack of experience, maybe the lack of talent. They need to improve in that area. I would absolutely call Matt Canada out for that. But I will point out again that they might not be the most talented group there. All of that put together, everything I've said sounds like a 4 or 5 win team. How'd they win 9 games? They have a good defense.
Great
they
coaching.
Were without their best player for half that time.
Great coaching.
If TJ Watt was going to miss significant time, which I would say is probably 3 games or more, last season, I said if there's a major injury to Watt, and statistically speaking, among edge rushers, especially the really explosive ones, they don't get to age 29 without a major injury. It just doesn't happen. And it happened pretty much right away for Watt. If that were to happen, I put them at 5 wins.
Yeah.
For them to have won 9 dramatically the way that they did, not pretty. Keep that in mind. It's not like they were a juggernaut or anything.
But it's still is football. It's never pretty. It's never pretty.
Tomlin got that team to believe in itself. It got them to perform above what the sum of their parts should have suggested. That is coaching. That's probably, I'd use the word leadership more than anything. Coaching is X's and O's. You have your assistants that are doing that along with yourself. Leadership is keeping everybody involved, keeping their head above water. They had ample opportunity to quit on that season. Okay. Any fan listening to this right now, don't tell me you thought things were great come week 5, week 6. Okay. You were not thrilled.
They can't tell you that. They can't tell you that.
I'm sure the players were not happy either. He kept them together. Allegedly, there was some type of encounter at halftime between your most targeted receiver and your free agent signed quarterback. They're swinging on each other, whatever's going on there. To keep that group together, to compete late outside the playoff picture. It's not like they were overtaken or anything. They had to claw their way back in. To be in the position that they were in at the end, it's remarkable. And to be honest with you, I might argue that the 2021 team was worse.
Yeah,
And they
because
made the
they were full
playoffs.
of veterans.
Okay, they somehow, they showed up for the playoffs. I think the Chiefs probably, had more of the headline that day.
Oh,
But
yeah.
for them to have, for Mike Tomlin and staff to have taken what I felt was a highly under-talented team, which, by the way, to that point, your general manager retired. You have a new GM who hired the first assistant GM in Steelers history, a guy who's known for scouting. They're trying to do something about it. They're trying to get better while the coach has held this together without a complete collapse. No, I don't want to fire him. I want to do exactly what the Steelers did. I want to bring in somebody to help with personnel, which is Andy Weidel. And I wanted to be able to build on what looks like decent drafts the last couple of years. I like the direction they're going. A lot of it is, like everybody in the NFL, it's going to depend largely on what Kenny Pickett can be game in and game out. I like what I saw at the end of the year. I expected them to be the dumpster fire they were at the beginning of the year. Where they're going now, it leaves me with a sense of optimism because I think this team can compete because of the trials that they had and the confidence they should have that they were able to overcome a lot of this stuff. I think they've gotten better this year. I think they can be a little bit more competitive this season.
Yeah, and I agree because they're younger, they're faster, but like you said, there's still some holes that need to be filled. But last question before I have to let you go, unfortunately, as it's been a great time. Speaking of quarterback Kenny Pickett, I gotta ask all my guests this just to see, do you believe in him like others? Is Kenny Pickett the future for Pittsburgh? And how can fans adjust from the era of Roethlisberger, which was a great one, to Pickett?
I think that he is because they're going to make it so. I think the real question isn't he is the future. They're going in with Pickett. I think they're going to get him some help on the offensive side in particular. They need better protection. They need more explosion. They're going to help him out in the draft. They want him to continue being who he is. This is the big thing that always got me with Pickett. I asked around a bit some of the people within the Pitt program. They all kind of said the same thing as if it was almost instructed to them to say it. But it when you look at him, you can tell whether it's authentic or not. They really truly felt like this. All of them said anybody in this building, if Kenny asked them to, they'd run through a wall. That's the kind of guy he is. Now, is Kenny the guy that's going to break the wall down like a Mahomes, like a Justin Herbert, the high-end talent? No. And that's gonna shorten his ceiling a little bit. But as we saw, and I said this last year after they drafted him, he gets more out of himself than a lot of other guys do. It's not that he isn't talented. He really is not physically dominant. He just isn't.
Yeah, he's not like gonna be as physical as Ben, which I don't expect him to.
He's not even close. Not even close to as physically talented as Ben was.
Yeah, and
but
I think what
he has the moxie. He has the leadership ability that brings more out of everybody else. My favorite moment of Kenny Pickett, not the late touchdown passes against the Raiders and the Ravens. It was when he got knocked down by I forget which Bills player it was at a throwaway point in the game, and he got up and started fighting the guy. Okay, literally half this.
That's the first that I heard that. That's the first.
You watch it, it's late in the game. He gets knocked down. It's not even really a particularly dirty hit. It's kind of a, hey, Rook, welcome to the NFL. A little bit of kind of some business, but not. It wasn't bad. Not anything that should have drawn a flag. Pickett got up and went after the dude. That's my kind of guy. I want a quarterback like that. It was like almost the people around him, including the guy he was attacking, were all like shocked. It's like, what is he doing? He's going to get killed in that fight. If he really pissed the guy off, he would have absolutely killed him. But that's the fire that he has. That's how competitive he has. He's pissed off. The play didn't go the way that it wanted to. He didn't want to be laying on his ass with the guy standing over him. He's pissed about that. Should he go do that? Probably not. But I want that fire. And that's the kind of stuff that compels other guys to rally around him. That's leadership. That's the kind of guy somebody is going to follow. Pickett has that in spades, and that's the part I'm really excited about to see how he's going to improve. He's got the whole offseason without worrying about the draft, without all that stress. He's going to have a full training camp as the number one guy. Ample opportunity for him to get coached up. I'm excited to see the level of improvement that he'll make. He's not going to be a 130 rated passer. He's probably not throwing for 50 touchdowns. That's not, he doesn't have the physical ability.
Ben never even threw for 50 touchdowns, so it's unfair to even expect that part.
They'll still probably want to run the ball a bit as well. But I think Pickett, in moments, we've seen him elevate his game. You know, I mentioned this before. Go back to that Dolphins game. Those picks they're infuriatingly bad, especially with how poor that defense started that night. Awful. For the defense to shore themselves up, it put the offense in a position to win that game late. They almost won that game. Keep that in mind. That's the weirdest thing in the world. If you watch the first two drives, oh my God, the Dolphins completely shredded them. For them to have been in a position late to compete for that game, it was absolutely phenomenal. Pickett, maybe two of the worst throws he had all year came late in that game. You can tell he took that to heart, because you go back, and it was in your intro clip, when he rolled away from pressure and hit Najee against Baltimore in the end zone. That's a man throw.
I had to add that one.
It was a great play. That's what a winning quarterback does. I don't care what his box score looks like. He can make that play with the game on the line. And he had like 4 of those kinds of throws in that drive. And he did the same thing against Las Vegas, the same type of position. They needed him to be at his best. They needed him to be better than his best. And he was. That's Kenny Pickett, what we know of him right now. Now, I probably like his coaches. I would prefer that he, does a little bit more in quarters 1 through 3, so it doesn't have to be a 17-16 come from behind game. But we'll see. Let's see what happens. There's optimism. There are absolutely going to be more talented quarterbacks in the NFL. He grew up pretty quick, and I'm impressed with that. I like his fire. I like his level of leadership. I think they can make hay with him. I think it's just a matter of they're going to need to be very balanced. They're not going to be a great statistical team. Gone are the fantasy football Steelers. Ben, the killer bees. That isn't going to be around anymore.
It's very rare that a Steeler team is like that, though, offensively. And I think that's what made the killer bees so rare, in my opinion.
Yep, they're absolutely rare, too. I mean, really, 2015, you could easily told me that they've got a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver who are going to be in the Hall of Fame. That's the track they were on. Things didn't work out. That's a whole other topic for another show. But they're not going to be able to do that. As much as we love George Pickens, he ain't Antonio Brown. Okay. Najee Harris is not 2014, 2015 Le'Veon Bell. Kenny and Ben.
I love Kenny, but no, we're not seeing that.
There are greater curses. Okay. You can figure things out. They've invested a bunch of money into their offensive line. That's something everybody complained about. The continuity that they'll have. I think there's still another new starter coming. That's just me. A coach who actually managed to stay there for more than a year. That's nice. That's going to help. Give Coach Meyer another year with the same guys. They figured out schematically running inside zone worked a lot better than running gap, which is what they did before the bye week. And then it's not a coincidence that they ran the ball really well over the second half of the year. They were running a lot more inside zone. I think the line got used to that. I think Najee got healthier and he was able to read better what he was doing. I think they all just struggled running gap, and inside zone worked better, and they really went hard into that. They have a lot of momentum to bring into camp, and that's going to be a critical thing. There are a lot of good things to look forward to, and they have the most early and valuable draft capital they've had in my lifetime. I think I don't know how many times they've had 3 picks in the top 46 or whatever it is. I don't think they're going to trade them. I think they're going to draft all of them. They're going to be able to bring in multiple highly regarded prospects, and they're going to need all of them to play. So you pick up marquee positions like a tackle. I think cornerback. Word is now, before we went on the show, they're talking to veteran safety Keanu Neal. Sounds like that might be the safety depth that they're looking to add. So bring in a cornerback, I think, in one of those picks as well. Get some type of playmaker on the offensive side. I'm not against a receiver. Look, you need dudes that can make plays. That's the NFL today. Get dudes that can make plays.
Both sides of the ball. Honestly, all three phases.
Yep.
Including special teams.
Yep. Terrell Edmonds isn't around because Terrell Edmonds didn't make plays on the ball. DeMonte Casey, I think, pretty sure. Somebody can, anybody's watching this and wants to do the math, look it up. Terrell Edmonds failed to make a play on the ball in like 900 snaps. And I think it took Casey 15 snaps to do it when he finally got in the game. They need playmakers. Offensively in particular, I like Jaylen Warren. I think Najee is their guy. Getting some type of shifty difference-making type of back might help. I don't know if they'll draft that. Certainly not all that high, but guys that can make plays without the structure having to go perfectly. That's really what they need. And we'll see if they're able to do that or not. But they get that. I think they can be a pretty formidable team.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again. I agree with everything that you said. I think you hit it right on the note, and you said pretty much what Steeler Nation and all topics needed to hear. But unfortunately, I gotta let you go, Mr. Coolong. Once again, thank you for joining BlitzHerz podcast. This is your host, May Shayla, aka Shay. You can follow me on Twitter at ShayMaxSports, but please don't forget to follow my special guest, Neal Coolong, on Twitter and Instagram at Neal Coolong. This is your host, May Shayla, signing out, and this has been BlitzHerz.
Black and yellow, black and yellow. Yeah.
Goes to the back of the end zone, and it is fires, intercepted, picked off at a pick six. Minka Fitzpatrick is an absolute bullhawk.
They can pick down here from the gun. Steelers show blitz. Here they come. He gets it away, and it's picked off at the goal.
Picked off Polamalu.